How's everybody going? I hope you're well. This is the first of my Patreon Q&As. So I do want to thank my patrons for just such a wonderful bevy of questions for me to answer. And I hope that you enjoy. If you are interested in getting into this, you can hit me up at patreon.com/onlydog-on-the-left. And without further ado, here we go. Our very first question, starting off nice and simple, is where do babies come from? And this is quite easy. So when a mummy and a daddy love each other very much or are drunk, then can you define some of your own politics and values? So my politics are obviously left of center. I'm a leftist in the sense that I am a materialist. I think that you can look at things like inequality and you can identify the material differences that exist there. Part of that is being historically literate, and by looking at history, you are able to understand the current world. For instance, if you look at black people in America and the inequity and inequality that exists in income, in educational outcomes, all of those sorts of things, you can identify elements throughout history that have impacted upon those. And part of Michael Brooks', Wonderful Against the Web, is he talks about the left seeks to historicize things while the right tends to want to naturalize or mythologize. Either naturalizing in the sense that, different races have different IQs, or mythologizing in the sense of spirit or some sort of metaphysical claim like that. Politics-wise, I tend to vote, left of centre parties in Australia. That's Labor or Greens. I am pretty torn about the prospects of any further left parliamentary parties. I think there's a lot of work to do outside the parliamentary system, building dual power structures and the like. What are your favourite fiction books that align with your political beliefs or that you find eye-opening and insightful? I think my favourite book along these lines, and one of my favoritist books ever, is 1984. That book is so incredibly wonderful, and as I literally remember, I was reading it in bed at night, and when I finished it and I read the very last page, turned it back over and started reading it again, and I read it a second time through. And that book is just, obviously, George Orwell, fantastic writer, so well written, and I think explores a lot of the psychological elements that go into living in a state that negates your freedom, that negates liberty, and that tries to enforce that not just at a physical level, but an intellectual and moral level as well. I think to complement that, Brave New World is also really good. 1984 is about having your freedom taken away from you, whereas Brave New World is about giving up your freedom, quote unquote, voluntarily. And I think that it's important that both of those things are put side by side. Both the negation of freedom by an overwhelming power, as well as a society and a culture that takes away people's freedoms, but that they're glad that their freedoms are taken away. What Hogwarts house are you? So I am Hufflepuff, because of course I am. I was looking up the founder of Hufflepuff the other day, and she brought the house elves to Hogwarts. House elves are slaves? Prove me wrong. Who are your most disliked public figures politics-wise, both worldwide and in Australia? I have a lot of disdain for the kind of Andrew Bolts of the world, the Tucker Carlsons, the Ben Shapiros, Dave Rubin, in Australia, Paul Murray, those kind of people who I think are grifters. I don't think they really hold the convictions that they peddle, but they have made their career out of being reactionary, hateful, and spreading those messages. And I absolutely deplore those people. I think that you can be a morally sane person and be on the right. I think you can be a morally sane person and be a conservative or be religious. But those people weaponize that form of disagreement and reactionary political agenda for their own means. And they do a lot of harm while they're doing it. So I really dislike those kind of conservative reactionary pundits. Would you ever get into Australian politics for yourself, and are you the next potential Prime Minister? I think there's a lot of problems with the political system. I don't think I'd ever be pre-selected, from a major party, which means I would probably never have any chance of getting into politics. I grew up on MySpace and then Facebook, and I'm sure there are things that I've put on the internet in the past 15 years of being an adult that, no longer, that would come back to haunt me. And I'd obviously own up to all of that stuff. I think people should be allowed to grow and to mature and to move on from mistakes they've made in the past. But at the same time, I think in the media sphere that we live in, I don't think I'd ever get a look in unless I use that as my platform of I don't care what you think about me. I'm going to say the unpopular things, a real popularist leftist platform, which might work, but I don't think, in the Australian political system, I'd ever get a look in. You said in your videos you're a school teacher. Can you give us any insight on how political beliefs are changing or any trends that are forming in your students? Also, has this shifted over your time as a teacher? I think over the last 10 years or so that I've been a teacher, students are definitely more interested in politics and more aware of what's going on. And I would say that's because of the vast amount of media that they consume, and mostly through social media, and the politicization of social media platforms, both by the huge companies that wield that power and by users who have utilized those platforms as tools. And I think that that's wonderful. I obviously think that it's important that media literacy is taught in schools. That's a really fundamental aspect of allowing students to be able to critically analyze the kind of things that they look at. And, the difference between perspective, which everybody has, and bias. And those sorts of distinctions are really important for kids to learn, and adults as well. I shouldn't just say kids, for everybody to learn when they're consuming media. With the recent global pandemic, how do you view the shifts that are occurring regarding society and politics surrounding earth-changing events? How do you think we would act if we had other major natural events, war, terrorism, civil wars, etc.? I think one of the most interesting things to come out of this is the lack of, not belief, trust, I guess, in governments, particularly with lockdowns, mask mandates, things like that. And I view that as a symptom of the current neoliberal order. I mean, governments are responsible for keeping people safe, for keeping society as a whole safe, and so a lockdown makes sense. However, they are so beholden to corporations and to neoliberal monetary entities that they can't then turn around and help people with their incomes or help to support and sustain, small businesses. And so what you're seeing is a government kind of at odds with itself that is trying to enforce a lockdown to stop the spread of a global pandemic and giving handouts to giant corporations to help keep them going, but destroying small businesses in a lot of places. And a lot of people have a lot of justified anger at that. And I think that my analysis is correct in that it's not, crazy Marxist globalists that are, in power trying to destroy small business, which wouldn't make sense at all, but that it is, the kind of austerity endpoint for neoliberal governments. How are we going to go with other major disasters? I don't know. I don't think that, our current systems work. And I think as soon as there is any sort of pressure on them, the inequities and inequalities become exacerbated, and I think that's what we're seeing now. Why do you think the right are so fearful or angered by some of our seemingly reasonable leftist beliefs, example, homosexuality, women's rights, embracing multiculturalism, and breaking gender stereotypes? I have a theory about this. Essentially, I think that people on the left have an analytical framework that they look at the world through. This might be correct or it might not be. And they analyze society and what's happening, and then from there they can draw conclusions. People on the right tend to have the conclusions first of what they would like, and then work backwards and try and come up with a justification that that's actually good, or that the things that are happening now that are going to change what they want are bad. And I think the person that does this the best is Ben Shapiro. By the best, I mean is the best example. Ben Shapiro says, he's a religious Jew and he has all these beliefs about the world, and he actually, because of his logical brain juices, thinks that there are good reasons for those. But the reasons have come second. And that's, I think, what is happening with all of the examples given here. They go against the end goals that these people have. And so what they then need to do is work backwards, and, because they don't have all the power in society anymore, and they can't just regulate away or legislate away these kinds of things. And so they have to then come up with really strained, incredulous reasons for why they think their, really dystopian view of society is one that we should want. We see you making an impact on connecting and educating with the general public with the pathways you're taking with your political beliefs, may I say activism, like this YouTube page. How do you think we can get involved without having to go through bigger avenues like yourself? Well, first off, thank you very much. That is very kind. There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and one of the forefathers of Stoicism, and it's essentially teach or tolerate. And I think that's a good axiom, not only for you to live a sane life, but also for praxis, which is, putting theory into practice. I think you either need to be okay with people believing different things or doing different things if you're not willing to try and educate them. And I mean educate in the broader sense. I imagine some people right now are thinking of re-education camps in China or what have you. But I really do think that having those conversations is well worth it. And quite often, being a reactionary, having a knee-jerk reaction to something that you hear is the easy thing to do. And sometimes a little amount of pushback on that can make someone go, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that, or oh yeah, I see where you're coming from, or oh yeah, I hadn't considered that aspect. So having those conversations and that mantra of teach or tolerate is, I think, really useful. Do you love the soy? What other milks do you recommend? Of all the non-dairy milks, I do like soy the best. I don't tend to like the expensive brands. Soy milk can be done in so many different ways that there are a lot of variations of it. I really enjoy the Woolworths home brand cheapo version or the Aldi, cheapo version. Although, to be saying that, McDonald's, the McCafe, has just got, I think it's Plant Lab almond milk. That is insanely tasty. I have a caramel latte with that almond milk, and it is so good. If you haven't tried that, give it a try. You own a dog yourself? If not, why not dog? Currently, we don't have a dog. Unfortunately, where we're living at the moment, we're not allowed pets. However, we are in the process of saving up for a deposit. Well, we have a deposit for our house, but getting everything in order for that. And so hopefully we'll be building within the next few months. And once we're moving, we are getting whippets. Working with young people, do you have any recommendations on child-friendly media or entertainment that will give good political mindful values? I personally think Avatar: The Last Airbender is awesome. Do you know of any more? I really don't have an answer for this one. I haven't seen Avatar, although I really want to, and I've heard great things about it. But I would like to extend this to the audience. What other kid-friendly media do you think has a lot of good values and can help to educate children on, things outside whatever the main driving emphasis of the plot is? What are your plans going forward with this channel? I don't have any real huge plans. I'm really enjoying it. It's been a great creative outlet for me, and I've loved the interaction and the feedback that I've been getting from making these kinds of videos. You can see, and I was thinking about this the other day, that the emphasis of my videos has changed quite a lot, even over just the couple of months that I've been making this. I did a lot more satirically videos right at the start, and they've turned more into response videos or chud dunking. I have been liking the Against the Web reading series that I've been doing, and I would like to hopefully do some more books in the future. If you've got any ideas, drop them below. It does, however, as I've discovered, take a long time to do that. So, but that is something that I've been really keen on doing more of. But as for my plans, I'm open to suggestions. I'm really enjoying this process though, and hopefully I'm going to be doing this for, the foreseeable future. What do you see in our world's future, both in a progressive way and in a not so progressive way? I can foresee that socially we will become more tolerant, I hope. I think that trend is going to continue. But I do worry that will take the focus off the driving factors, the materialist factors of our society that still cause a lot of inequality and a lot of suffering and a lot of harm to people and to groups. And I think that there's a lot of lip service paid on the left, the political left, to socially progressive values, while behind the scenes they're still supporting, imperialistic wars or a finance system that disproportionately disadvantages certain groups, or propping up, exploitative working and industrial relations, or exploiting third world countries' labor markets for cheap consumer goods, or the property market bubble that's great for investors and great for people that own heaps of property already, but not any good at all for people trying to get into it or for renters. And you can see the difference between the average person and the political class. And I feel like that divide is widening, and that's going to at some point have to be addressed, because there are structural and systemic inequities and inequalities that, can't be plastered over by a giant bank, like ANZ saying that they're gay NZ for, Pride Week or whatever. I think there's going to have to be, I don't want to say a reckoning, but yeah, a reckoning. Where do you think our society needs to be putting resources towards for the betterment of society? The first thing that I would echo is, Scott Morrison or, centre-right politicians that say we want people to be keeping more of their money. And what he means is income tax breaks. What I would mean when I'm saying that is, rather than an exploitative capitalist system where you go into work and the value of your labor is stolen and you're paid only a percentage of that, rather, through worker-owned co-ops or whatever the organizational structure is, workers are in control of their workplaces. And rather than being part of the deductions tally, wages are not seen as an expense for businesses, for companies, because the wages are the profits. The profits are belonging to the employees. And so, if you and all the people that work at your factory are in control of it, you're not going to outsource all the work that you do at your factory to somewhere in China or Indonesia or India, because that would make no sense for you, because then you would be out of a job. I think those kind of changes are what we need to work towards. In the meantime, obviously, I think health, education, and services can have a lot more money put towards them. As a teacher, what do you think of the education system and where do improvements need to be made? The biggest overall change that I think needs to happen is the approach, a society-wide approach to education. In Australia, students on the whole don't like school and don't see a value in school, and society at large doesn't see a value in education. In other countries, for instance, Finland, where they have a wonderful school system, there is a huge amount of respect for teachers and a huge amount of respect for the process of education. I think there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from the Finnish system. That might be something that I do a video on later, because the Finnish system is really, really wonderful. Who are your favourite public figures regarding politics? In Australian politics, I would have to say Paul Keating, ex-Labor Prime Minister. Really acerbic wit, incredibly intelligent guy. I think he was 14 when he dropped out of school, but he is just someone that I think personifies the kind of people that should be in politics. He obviously ended up as Prime Minister. You don't do that without, doing some dealings. However, he understood the game, and one of his quotes was, I'll probably butcher this, but you need to have a reason for why. And, there's no use in getting political power if you don't want to do something with it. And he was very much into doing something with the political power he had. Another person that I really looked up to only in the past tense because he's since died is Christopher Hitchens. Wonderful, wonderful writer. And he really made me take stock of my political views and allowed me the chance to identify as a leftist and to understand what that meant. One other person is Michael Brooks. Unfortunately, he passed away last year as well. Very young, I believe he was 37. Very out of the blue. His segments on the Majority Report and then his own The Michael Brooks Show were really, I don't want to say eye-opening because that doesn't encompass it. Soul-opening, I suppose. His internationalist, compassionate view of politics. One of his quotes is, be kind to people and be, I think, brutal to institutions, or be brutal to systems, something like that. Harsh on systems. And that's a really good message. You know, we're looking at systems of inequality, systems of oppression that we want to change, and we need to be compassionate and empathetic and caring towards people, because if we're not, what's the point? Are you in a party? If you're in the ALP, which faction are you in? So I am a member of the Queensland Labor Party. After the previous federal election, I realised that if I wanted LNP to be beaten, I needed to help Labor. They are the only viable option. So I signed up, and thankfully the Liberals didn't get in Queensland at last year's state election. Labor's back in. However, I think I'm in Labor left, quite obviously. My membership is about to expire though, and I don't think I'm going to renew it. There's no parties on the left. The Greens, you know, I might as well be supporting Labor. Socialist Alliance or Socialist Alternative don't really meet my vision. I'm more of a libertarian socialist, you know, getting towards more of an anarcho-syndicalist view of society. And so big, centrally planned socialist, you know, Marxist political parties don't interest me too much. I have toyed with, you know, starting a Libertarian Socialist Party of Australia, but that might be sometime in the future. If you've listened this far, thank you very much. I've enjoyed this tremendously. Thank you to those of you who submitted questions, and to my patrons, thank you so much. In Puppy Preschool, I have Ben Davis. My guard doggos are Jordan Mark and Tristan Hennessy, and A. Zeitlo, Jackson Orville, and Dangwin. You are very good boys. If you'd like to support what we're doing here, or would like the chance to submit questions in upcoming Q&As, you can head over to patreon.com/onlydog-on-the-left and check out what we've got going on there. Or if you'd like to make a one-off donation, you can go to streamlabs.com/onlydog-on-the-left. Thank you so much, and I will see you all next time. Catch you later.